Alright, guys. How's it going? Did you know that the Netherlands has some of the best bicycle infrastructure in the entire world? I didn't until recently, and I'm absolutely blown away that they have such a good system. And here in America, we don't have a system, and this is just genius. I wish we would have followed in their footsteps. So, without further ado, this um, video is called "The Bike Lanes You Can't See," and it is by Not Just Bikes. And if you have not seen their videos yet, you need to go check them out. Like, watch this video first, but then check out them because they have awesome videos. Okay.
If you're familiar at all with bicycle infrastructure, then you're familiar with separated bicycle paths. In most cities, these are considered the gold standard for bicycle infrastructure, and with good reason. In general, if you want to keep people on bicycles safe from 2-ton death machines, you want to physically separate them, and not put them in a painted bicycle gutter. But what's
Why do
also
I always do that? Okay, so going back a moment, the red, I learned today, do not walk on the red lines because, or the red strips, because those are for bicycles. They have a path for bikes, cars, and like everything else. It's just watch. It's crazy. I haven't seen this yet, but I've been watching a lot of videos from them, so they're from the Netherlands.
and not put them in a painted bicycle gutter. But what's also great is when you can cycle to wherever you're going and almost never encounter a car at all. It might not look like it, but this is
That's the complete opposite here. I feel like Charlie and I went for a walk today, and we did see a couple, maybe a few. That's pushing it a little bit. Um, riding their bikes, and then I seen a dog. Other than that, it was hot too. So
bicycle infrastructure. And so is this. And this. What you're seeing here, or rather not seeing, is the Dutch concept of ontvlechten, which in this context means
one flex.
disentangling. I'll explain how that works, but first we need to understand how most other cities do things. In a
Dude,
typical
those subway thingies back there, never have been on one in my entire life. That's why I'm mostly scared to even leave my town because things like that. Like I wouldn't even know what to do. Like there a ticket booth somewhere, you go get a ticket and then you get on, and I don't know. I'm guessing they do have them in Indiana. I'm what do they call that? I've been very sheltered my whole life.
city, there will be roads and everybody will use them. Everybody will take the same route, regardless of what vehicle they're using. And if this route gets too jammed up, then people will just cut through this neighborhood over here. This free-for-all strongly encourages driving, which generates insane amounts of car traffic and ultimately leads to busy, congested
Wow,
streets.
that thing was really trippy. When I first seen it, I'm like, what is going on? Like, and I thought I'm really surprised to see like all these wires up here because that's something that I thought only happened in like in other places. They have those windmill thingies. Like we're just so used to seeing them all the time.
That are highly unpleasant to be around. The suburban cul-de-sac neighborhood acknowledges this problem and solves it by making driving routes
They
so
perfectly formulated. Like that's crazy. Somebody said on one of my comments that we could have done this. We could have had this system, and things could have been totally different. It's
circuitous and convoluted that nobody but residents will be able to figure them out. Unfortunately, it does this for everyone, so distances become completely impractical to walk or cycle, which encourages even more driving, traffic, and car dependency.
Oh.
Here is an example from the subreddit Suburban Hell.
So it does look like a lot of people have cars in their driveway. All the houses almost look identical. That's crazy.
These two houses in Florida share a backyard, but it would take over 2 hours to walk between them. The Dutch
Wow.
take a very different approach. There are many different types of roads, but not all routes are accessible by car. This isn't done randomly or just when residents complain. Rather, there is a conscious effort to separate or disentangle these routes taken by car drivers from those taken by everyone else.
Like, yo, I'm getting ready to put this video out with Charlie. We've been recording our walks a little bit just to show you like our sidewalks and stuff like that. And they are not even rideable. I mean, we've been having issues. Like a couple years ago, a kid got hit because he was in the road playing, and it's like you can't even have them go on the sidewalk and them be safe. Like they can't kick a ball around on the sidewalk because it just doesn't work. It's about to rain here.
In effect, designing completely different road networks for different types of traffic. These are called hoofdnets, or main networks, and most Dutch cities have them. For example, here is the hoofdnet plan for 's-Hertogenbosch. And here is the plan for Amsterdam. The Amsterdam plan goes a step further by designating parts of the network as plusnets, which specify which form of traffic gets the highest priority along the route, including things like traffic signal timing. And when a street is redesigned, the plusnet will define the priority of how the space is allocated.
So I think bike is priority. So if there's a bike, like a car, correct me if I'm wrong, but a car has to like pretty much yield for that bike.
For example, this street in Amsterdam is part of both the bicycle and tram plusnets, so one lane of cars has been removed completely to give more room for cyclists and to give trams their own lane. If you want to learn more about the distinction between plusnets and hoofdnets, the city has published a thrilling 80-page document describing the plan that I'll link to in the description. It's a real page-turner.
Mm.
But ultimately, they are both part of the same thing, different networks for different types of traffic. Amsterdam has hoofdnets for cars, bicycles, public transportation, and walking.
So I didn't notice in the back, like I seen the stoplights just a few seconds ago. So do you guys have green, yellow, and red like we do? Like we have red for stop, obviously, green for go, and then yellow is like yield. My grandpa always used to say that meant go faster, but he's dead. But rest in
The
peace. I don't
implications of
mean
this
that in a
are
bad
really
way.
interesting. Here's an example of a street in the car network during rush hour. And here's an example of the street in the bicycle network just around the corner. It's clear from the volumes of traffic which form of transportation is being favored here. Bicycle networks also incorporate bicycle-only roads wherever possible, sometimes separated from the car network by underpasses, removing the requirement for a stop.
You don't even know how much more comfortable I would be living there. Like I already know. It's like so much different. Holy cow.
Light completely. It's also common for the networks for walking and cycling to purposefully cross through city parks, making it even more pleasant to walk and cycle through the city. These routes are enforced in many different ways. Sometimes it's with signs, and sometimes it's with physical barriers. This is not a new concept. Even the Romans did it to keep carriage traffic out of certain areas. Urban planners call
Oh
this
wow.
filtered permeability. But the important thing to note here is that this is not being done haphazardly.
What? What was? Wait a minute. So they have like you could pop. Does your tires get popped doing that? Like going through that thingy or whatever that was?
Filtered permeability. But the important
Oh, That's crazy. Maybe it's an ice cream bicycle instead of an ice cream truck.
The thing to note here
Looks
is
like a
that this is
cooler.
not being done haphazardly. It's specifically done to encourage traffic along a network. For example, here is a street with filtered permeability in our old neighborhood in Toronto that lets pedestrians and cyclists through, but not drivers. But this only happened after years of residents fighting with traffic engineers. Here in the Netherlands, filtered permeability is built in everywhere and specifically designed to encourage different types of traffic along designated routes. This often allows cyclists and public transportation users to take the fastest and most direct route to where they are going, while car
Yep.
traffic is allowed only for local destinations. For example, here's
Wow.
how I cycle to a meeting in Nord, and here's how I drive there. Here's how I cycle to a friend's house, and here's how I drive there. Here's how I cycle to IKEA, and here's how I drive there. You might think that this situation is bad for car drivers, but ultimately it's not. If there were a direct route to drive everywhere, then most of these people on bicycles and trams would be driving too, and the street would be so congested
You
that it would
guys
take
use your
ages to
hands
drive
to like
anywhere.
motion what way
In
you're
fact,
going?
that was the situation here
You
in
do too.
Amsterdam in the 1970s. The city was so clogged with cars that the streets were not only highly inefficient, but also extremely dangerous, which is the current situation in most American and Canadian cities today. When I drive in Amsterdam, I'm amazed how little car traffic I encounter for a city of this size. It's also important to note that these Hoofdnets and Plusnets are not made as a replacement to proper bicycle infrastructure, but rather in addition to it. For example, the London Quiet Ways cycling plan was used to put cyclists on quiet streets, but it was usually done to avoid having to build proper cycling infrastructure on major roads, and often prevented cyclists from taking the most direct route to their destinations. In the Netherlands, most busy streets will still have separated bicycle path, even on routes designed for cars, unless
That's
the
just
street
so
is
weird
very
to
old and
see. Like
hasn't been redesigned in the last 30 or 40
all those
years.
bikes.
I was absolutely amazed when I discovered these maps because it totally changed the way I looked at cycling in cities in the Netherlands. These routes mean that cycling in Dutch cities can be very relaxing and extremely safe, even on streets that look like they have no bicycle infrastructure. Because you
That's another thing. Man, America is awful. Like I can't. I'm so paranoid anymore. You can't trust anybody, and that's something that, gosh, it's awful. It really is awful. You double think everything after what you hear all the time. What's happening around here? It's just maybe that's why we don't have this system. Like I don't know.
can ride through the streets of a bicycle hoofnet and hardly ever cross paths with a car at all. And it's all thanks to the invisible bicycle infrastructure that Dutch planners use to ensure that their streets are as pleasant and efficient as possible. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my supporters on Patreon who pay me to read 80-page documents from the gemeente.
Alrighty, that's it, guys. Um, yeah, that was really informative, and I would love, love, love to have that life. I would. Plus, I don't know. I just don't know. Anywho, thanks for watching. If you like the video, hit the like button, please, please, please. It helps me a lot. Um, and yeah, I hope you have a good day. Catch you in the next video.